President Joe Biden opens his virtual climate summit with an ambitious pledge to further cut US emissions.
All of us, and particularly those of us who represent the world's largest economies, we have to step up.
A Cold War mindset. China blasts Australia after it blocks the controversial Belt and Road deal between Beijing and Victoria. India sees the world's highest ever number of daily COVID cases. And time running out. 72 hours until oxygen runs out in a missing submarine off the Indonesian coast.
This is SBS World News with Virginia Langeberg.
Good evening. The United States has made a vow to halve its emissions over the next decade as US President Joe Biden rallies the world to act swiftly on climate change. As we go to air tonight, dozens of world leaders, including Australia's Prime Minister, are attending a virtual global climate summit hosted by the White House. The event organised at the behest of President Biden to signal America's return to the Paris Agreement and rebuild its international credibility on the issue. Mr Biden announced America would have a new emissions reduction target of 52% by 2030. It's hoped this pledge will spur other nations to take stronger climate action.
But the truth is, America represents less than 15% of the world's emissions. No nation can solve this crisis on our own, as I know you all fully understand. All of us, and particularly those of us who represent the world's largest economies, we have to step up.
No country can overcome this existential threat alone. We're in this together.
Mr Biden has previously signalled his aim for America to hit net zero emissions by 2050. Following the US president's announcement, Japan announced it would be upping its 2030 target from 26% to 46%. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison is also in attendance from Sydney, but earlier today ruled out making any new commitments tonight.
Unless you're committed to working together to put in place the commercial technology that achieves net zero, then these are just media statements.
Earlier this week, Scott Morrison announced $1 billion in climate funding. China has lashed out at what it's calling Australia's Cold War mentality. It made the comments in response to Australia's scrapping of the controversial Belt and Road Agreement between Beijing and Victoria. China also becoming a focus of Foreign Minister Marise Payne's trip across the Tasman, her first to New Zealand since the start of the Australia-New Zealand travel bubble.
Diplomacy across the ditch in the first face-to-face meeting between foreign ministers.
Staying abroad, and India has set a new global high in the number of COVID-19 infections in a single day. More than 300,000. As the country struggles, scientists are looking into whether the new Indian variant is to blame for the country's crippling second wave.
India's healthcare system is in crisis. Its hospitals overwhelmed as the virus spreads faster than ever.
Prime Minister Scott Morrison has responded to the concerning situation in India. He's announced arrivals from there will be reduced by 30%.
A spike in India that is causing rising fear on our shores.
And Singapore has also announced new travel bans on arrivals from India. Long-term visa holders and short-term visitors who have recently travelled to the subcontinent will be barred. The government hopes it will help curb potential outbreaks among migrant workers living in cramped accommodation. Coming up, a plan to fast-track coronavirus vaccinations for Australians over the age of 50. Australians over the age of 50 will soon have fast-tracked access to coronavirus vaccinations as National Cabinet signs off on a rollout reset. The federal government will no longer restrict vaccine access to vulnerable groups, but fears continue that those who are in most need of the shot are missing out.
What you can see now is Australia, which is here.
Landmarks across Melbourne have been bathed in blue to mark 1 year since the horror crash that killed 4 police officers on Melbourne's Eastern Freeway. At 5:36 p.m, the moment of the crash, a call for a minute's silence was broadcast across police radios in Victoria. Earlier today, 4 wreaths were laid at Victoria's Police Academy Chapel, honouring leading Senior Constable Lynette Taylor, Senior Constable Kevin King and Constables Glenn Humphreys and Josh Presney. The crash remains the greatest loss of life in a single incident for Victoria's police force. Australia says it'll help Indonesia in any way possible in the search for a missing submarine with 53 sailors on board. The sub disappeared about 95 kilometres north of Bali during a military training exercise. There's been no contact since.
As the search for Indonesia's missing submarine approaches a third day, it's clear the clock is ticking.
4 people have been killed and at least 9 others were injured in a bomb explosion at a luxury hotel in Pakistan. The blast happened in the car park of the Serena Hotel in the southwestern city of Quetta. China's ambassador to Pakistan was staying at the hotel but was not there at the time of the explosion. The Chinese embassy has not commented on the incident. The Pakistan Taliban has claimed responsibility for the bombing, saying it was a suicide attack. A free trade deal between Australia and the United Kingdom is within reach, with crunch talks underway in London. But insults directed at Australia's Trade Minister have made negotiations a little more complicated. Chief International Correspondent Ben Lewis has the latest.
Well, it's thought that these trade talks are in the very final stages, and if enough progress is made in the coming hours, a draft agreement could be signed as soon as tomorrow.
Let's check the finance figures now, and the Australian share market powered 0.8% higher. The big 4 banks rose, but AGL fell after the resignation of its CEO. BHP did well, while cloud connectivity company Megaport was the best performer on the 200 following its quarterly update. Markets in Europe starting well at the beginning of their trading day, and $1 Australian is buying 77.5 US cents and is higher against other major global currencies. Coming up, the weather and celebrating First Nations artists, Sydney style. To the weather now, and in the major centres, a partly cloudy day in Darwin and Perth, sunny in Brisbane and Alice Springs, sunny also in Sydney but with possible smoke haze, a morning frost in Canberra, a shower or 2 in Melbourne, cloudy in Hobart and a possible morning shower in Adelaide. Looking further afield, a few showers in Auckland, partly cloudy in Christchurch and Noumea. In Southeast Asia, thunder in Bangkok and Phnom Penh, partly cloudy for Jakarta. Further north, and cloud over Beijing and Seoul, partly cloudy in Hanoi and Manila. Heading west now, fine in Jerusalem and Beirut, thunder in Delhi. To Europe, cloud in Athens, a fine day for Budapest and drizzle in Moscow. In Africa, partly cloudy in Cairo, Addis Ababa, thunder in Johannesburg and a few showers in Nairobi. In South America, thunder in Panama City, fine in Caracas, Lima and Santiago. And for North America, a fine day in New York, thunder for Dallas and a few showers about in Havana. And the Sydney Opera House is taking on a different look tonight. The sails have been lit for the 3rd chapter of the Opera House's First Nations Sails Lighting. It's celebrating the artwork and stories of 6 female First Nations artists for the Art Gallery of New South Wales on the gallery's 150th year. Looks beautiful. That's the world this Thursday. The SBS News website has all the latest stories, and get news anywhere, anytime with the SBS News app. Have a great night.